Pastor Roy Gerhardt from Galloway United Methodist Church in Franklin, Pennsylvania, sharing a few words of encouragement to help us follow after Jesus. Well, it's a Throwback Thursday, and on Thursdays we look at the promises of God and how God has fulfilled them. This Thursday, I want to look at a promise of God that began centuries ago, in fact, thousands of years ago, with a man named Abram. Promises are so important in our life because we build our relationships on trust. And how you keep your promises will either build up or tear down people's trust in you. These are promises that go from small to big, like promises to show up on time to pick somebody up from school or work, or the promises that I promise to honor and keep you in sickness and health till death do us part. Those lifelong promises of commitment. And some promises can last even beyond a lifetime. Have you ever been promised an inheritance that something of value was going to be passed on to you? And so promises have lasting impact. Even the short-term small promises build to a bigger degree of trust in our lives and open us up in our relationships to even more. Now, what promise are we talking about with God today? Well, it's a promise that began with a man named Abram, and it began thousands of years ago. When God called Abram, back in the book of Genesis, to go on a road trip with him, said, I want to take you out and show you a property. And God made a promise to this old man and his old wife who had no children that they would have descendants, and this property would be their homeland. This is such a powerful promise, and God fulfills it in Abraham, that Abraham and Sarah have a son named Isaac. And God takes that single descendant and builds up a people over time. In fact, a people that grow into a nation, and they have this homeland. Now, their residency there gets interrupted at various times. At one point, there was a departure from the land because of a famine into Egypt, where they became enslaved for like 400 years. And God brought them out with Moses and re-entered the promised land. And so they were there established, and God built them up as a nation, settled them in there. But then their sin was so severe that as we have reached the final chapter of 2 Chronicles, we see everything fall apart, and God actually evicts them from their home, says you can no longer live here. And so they are carried off into exile. First, the people of Israel in the northern part of the kingdom are carried off by the Assyrians. A couple hundred years later, it's the Babylonians who come and carry away the people from Jerusalem and Judah. And so that they are out of their homeland. It's no longer there as their nation and homeland. But God promised at the end of 2 Chronicles that he would bring them back. That in fact, after the Babylonians, which he promises is going to be 70 years of reign, that they would be pushed out of the way by the Persians, and that under the Persians, God would bring them back. And even by the time Jesus comes in ministry and acting as our Savior, the nation is there. It's under the domination of the Romans, but it's there. There is another, though, collapse, and the nation destroyed by the Romans. And so then for centuries, there was no nation of Israel in the Middle East. But then God once again fulfilled his promise, bringing the Hebrew people back to that homeland that he had promised so many thousands of years before to Abraham. And in 1948, in living memory of at least my parents, there was the reestablishment of the nation of Israel. This is God keeping a promise thousands of years old. An amazing feat, remarkable and miraculous, that there is a nation of Israel in the homeland promised to them. Yeah, God keeps his promises even when it takes thousands of years to see it through. Think about God's promises for you and me. you can put confidence in him. May God bless you today. And as you share his good news, may God make you a blessing wherever he takes you.